pain is a great motivator. Goals will inform your strategy and goals will inform your direction. Things are not perfect, that we don't live in a vacuum.
Everybody's path is going to be different, but it doesn't mean that you don't need to track accurately and follow the plan accordingly.
Yeah.
Growth just for growth's sake is not a good thing.
You have no context for behavior change if you're not rigid in your process. You really got to be okay with the fact that you're a valuable addition to somebody's life regardless of what you do.
Hey, what's up guys? Thank you for joining me and welcome to the show. It is a true blessing to be able to connect with the top minds in strength each and every week and share stories, insights, and experiences on becoming stronger in every area of our lives. And now I want to do more for you. I want to invite you to join the exclusive private Facebook group of The Strength Connection. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength in their lives, and it's the perfect space to explore ideas and share your journey. You'll also get exclusive access to the Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. Just go to the Facebook groups, type in the Strength Connection, and you'll be accepted immediately. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the inside. Welcome back, everybody. Paul. Good to see you, man. I said we better start recording this. We were just about to just get rolling for like an hour here if I didn't hit that. So
yeah, I was thinking, I'm like, man, are we going? Do we just go right into it?
Are we live? Yeah, are we ready to roll? So
easy record, man. That's always good.
Yeah, well, it's good to see you, man. I feel like I'm part Texan this week. I just had another coach from Texas earlier this week, and I know you've been down there for a little bit after coming from Illinois, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, man. I'm happy to do it. Yeah. Happy to do it. Love talking to cool people, man. What else is there?
I know, right?
What else is there if you can't have a great conversation?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I remember I met you over 10 years ago now when we were just talking the CKFMS workshop, which was one of still my favorite like physical strength workshops I ever went to. That was like 4 days of like deep dive into movement on the performance side, on the rehab side. There was like 90 people there. It was insane. Like so much knowledge bomb. I still remember that. And it was over a decade ago. But since then, like I saw what you and your wife, Angie, were doing with all your work, especially with the writing style, the simple and consistent message that you guys were getting out. And I've just really admired the work that you've done from transitioning from your gym that you had to moving, kind of going into online, kind of moving really across the country. So it's really awesome. I'm excited to hear, more about your story.
Yeah, man. Excited to share it. And thank you, by the way. You know how it is as a creative type when you put a message out consistently and your work is always out there and you're never sure if anybody's reading it. So
I know, right?
I'm glad to hear it's resonating, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, I know. Like I try and always like at least like respond or comment or like something just so people know I'm not just ghosting and just watching it. So being appreciative. But well, I mean, to kick this off, Paul, I know you've been in this business for a long time. I was getting a little bit of your origin story before we hit record, but if you can just kick off with a little bit of your background of how you got into this world of strength coaching and in health and fitness. Yeah,
absolutely, man. So not a high school athlete. I'll start there. Okay. Yeah. So hit the gym in college with the goal of getting bigger, stronger, like, getting, jacked, man, feeling better about myself, attracting some attention, and, was successful at that, I would say. Over the course of a couple of years, put on those newbie gains because I was consistent, so it's just like, it's super easy, man. Just pass go, collect your $200, lift heavy weights for 3 times a week for 3 years. You put on 20, 30 pounds, no problem.
Hitting double sixes every roll and just cruising around.
Dude, it is, man. Like I forgot who I was talking to the other day. I was like, dude, in college, I would eat like basically 2 meals a day, right? Like I'd eat a giant lunch, like whatever it was, giant dinner, go out, drink 10 beers, come home, eat an entire box of macaroni and cheese, and wake up with like veins in my abs still. Like, right. Like, it was just like, man, I wish that's not that way anymore. But,
oh my God, I remember those days too. Like I remember I would work out when I lived in Boston. I'd go work at a restaurant, eat a bunch of shit there, then go out to the bar till 2, 3 in the morning,
Yeah.
And then wake up, smell a cup of coffee, and be like just energized for the day.
Yeah, dude. So that's what I did. And so I actually got my start lifting. I actually, looking back, had a very good start because I bought a book called Gaining Mass by a guy called Anthony Ellis. And it was a whole big textbook about nutrition. It was like $100 package, right? And he sent it to you. And so there's a whole big book about nutrition. There was a 12-week training program with a training journal where you recorded your weight and reps. It came with a tape measure and a little plastic body fat caliper. It was a complete system. So right off the bat, I would say that was my introduction to it. And it just really resonated with me that it was data driven and I'm tracking my progress in the weight room and like it all, so that was pretty cool. Like from a meathead standpoint.
Yeah.
I would say that was a really good self-education tool. And, like I said, put on some size and got stronger for a couple of years, man. Right after college, just by chance, I linked up with just the other meathead in the gym in the small town I was at. And he was at the time, amateur bodybuilder, but over the time training with him, he got his pro card and pro natural bodybuilder, I should say. His name was Ben Goins, awesome dude. And then I would say somewhere along the line, just from all that meathead lifting, two things happened. One is my shoulders started hurting a lot.
Okay. Yep.
You know what I mean? From
lots of bench. Yep.
Overdosing on bench press. Like that's number one. But number two is like, man, I got into this to feel better about myself, like to feel confident, to feel bulletproof, right? And certainly putting on size can do that for you. And even, and you get stronger just by lifting for hypertrophy. You definitely get stronger. There's no doubt about it. But it's like, I wanted to feel like my body was useful as well.
Yeah.
And so that combined with the fact that it was becoming less useful and a little bit rigid is how I got into kettlebells actually.
Okay.
And Mike Mahler stuff, John Hines, who's like this little, I don't know, nobody knows about him, but he's amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like nobody knows about him. He's in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yep.
And I went up to Wisconsin and spent a week doing back-to-back of his certification. Monkey Bar Gymnasium, Mike Mahler got into kettlebells that way.
Yep.
And I was like, cool, man, these guys are both badass. And the one thing they have in common is they both trained with Pavel. So like, I'll go train with Pavel. Right. And so I did that. I got my RKC certification in 2010. And, I love that because now it was like, there was a different kind of confidence that comes from being able to perform. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's cool. It's cool to be yoked. Like, dude, I love being yoked, but there's this different kind of confidence that comes with like, I'm capable too. Right. Yeah. And so,
it's a weird feeling, right? It's, I resonate so much with that. Cause I was always on the slighter frame, about 155 to 165. And almost like in my head knew like I was never going to be one of those jack dudes in the gym. Like it just kind of in your head, just like, that's not going to be me. I'm sure if I went just straight hypertrophy and maybe some extracurriculars, I could have gone that route for a bit, but that feeling of like being super strong in the frame that you have it's a different type of confidence. I remember seeing some videos of like Mark Chang early on, who is like, I mean, he's not a big guy, but he's just maximized his strength. I think I saw him do like a 28 kilogram bottom up get up. And I was like, oh my gosh. Badass. Yeah. I'm like, that is badass. Like I want to do that. So it is, I understand the confidence that comes from the performance, not just from the aesthetic side.
Yeah. It's really cool, man. And, like I said, it's just a different kind of confidence. And then that gave me, confidence to go into other stuff. Right. So like I said before, I was never a high school athlete, but now I felt like an athlete with these kettlebell certs because they gave me something to train for. Because for those listening who don't know, the RKC certs, they had like performance standards. You had to do the dreaded kettlebell snatch test and, perform get-ups. And if you did level 2, there was the half body weight press and all this stuff. Right. So I got a little taste of what it's like to train for something specific and go for it. And I guess to back it up one step is, guys like me start working out because they feel insecure. Right. And even in the thing about getting bigger is that it's cool. You do gain confidence over time, but you still have insecurities. right? Because you could always just be bigger. You know what I mean, like, right? Like where is the end, right?
Where is the end? That's a really good point. Yeah.
And so this was really cool because it just gave a different angle to that confidence too. Like I looked the part, I walked the walk, and that was really cool. And it gave me confidence to go and start really the only sport I've ever done competitively, which at the age of 29, almost 30, I started jujitsu and then got really into that. You know, went down that rabbit hole, but it's the same deal where it's like, now I feel confident in that. Not that I want to go get in a street fight, but there's a different kind of confidence that comes from the fact that you're testing yourself physically against someone else all the time. Like, it was really cool, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm really glad I did that.
It's that confidence that comes from like just being able to carry yourself, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
that's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, it's a quiet confidence that comes from just being, and you can get that in a lot of different ways. And I've, talked with many people who've gone, especially in jujitsu, because, like, if this goes to the ground, I can take care of myself, with it.
For sure, man.
There is. But I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people who get into the gym, they get into programs, they want kind of in their mind, but it's not the goals that you hear about a lot from people right off the bat. It's like, oh, I want to drop 15 pounds or 20 pounds. Or I want to get stronger. I want to have more energy. Yes. When in reality, as you said, it's like, no, I'm feeling insecure and I don't feel comfortable walking around in my body.
That's what it is, man. And I think you were going to get into this anyway about getting clear about what you want. But so often it's like people actually don't know what they want, or they just know that they don't want to be here, but they don't know exactly where there is. And so that's when that like kind of ambiguous, like, oh, I want to drop 15 pounds. It's like, I don't know exactly what feeling amazing looks like. I haven't mapped that out in my head, like the vision where I want to go. I just know that this right now is causing me pain and distress. And I need to move from here, whatever that is, right? Like I need to lose this weight quick. And I think, quite frankly, that's where a good coach comes into play, because there's a lot of ways to lose that weight quick. You could do any of the MLM sort of starvation type stuff out there. You could cut a limb off and probably lose 15 pounds pretty quick, right?
You
could,
it
right?
Is an option,
I mean, there's tourniquet technology that will allow you to survive that, right? But then what? Now I weigh 15 pounds less. Now what? And so I think what a really good coach does is helps you define the vision of, it's not the number on the scale that's bothering you. It's all the accompaniments that come with that, the insecurity, the fact that you could be doing better, the fact that you're violating a standard for yourself that you know what I mean? You haven't even made clear that this is a standard for how I want to look and feel. It's changing how you show up energetically. And so it's like, hey, let's paint the picture of where you want to go, who you want to be, why this is important, by the way, because so many people end up living life below their standards physically and in other ways because they haven't sold themselves on how important it is to live up to their standards. They feel like it's selfish to want more. And so it's like, if we can get clear on all that stuff, man, now it's easy.
Why do you think that is such a challenge? I mean, this is something I think we'll go deep right away with on it, because I think this is such a powerful question, because especially, like, I'm sure you've gone through that as well, being, a veteran coach for many, many years. Yeah. I did the same thing, made all the mistakes for a long time of talking with people, but it's almost challenging too, as a coach because essentially saying, let's get really clear on this in like just a blanket term. It's like, okay, let's stop this momentum and this motivation that you have right now, that you want to put all this energy to go, and actually step back. That seems always like it's the challenge for coaches to have that almost confidence to step back with their client in there. You know where I'm coming from?
I do. Yeah. And I do know where you're coming from. And I would say that I meet them where they're at. And I'm not like, screw you, I'm not going to help you lose 15 pounds. I'm like, yeah, come on in, 15 pounds, no problem. Right. While we're at it, let's put you on the path of journaling, getting clear, deciding why this is important. You know what I mean? So I meet them where they're at, and then, try and pull them along this path. And the clients, and that's what's cool actually about our online business is like, we've created this culture with these ongoing mindset trainings every single week where you can just constantly immerse yourself in it. And it's like, if you came into the program now, our portal is backlogged with 2 years worth of calls. And some people come in and when they're fired up, they're like, okay, I'm going to consume all this content. And they're a completely different person within a couple of weeks because they've just immersed their brain into why it's so important to get clear on what they want.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't necessarily, I'm not like, hey, I don't pump the brakes on people anymore. I used to.
Right.
I used to for sure. And now I'm just like, cool, let's give you exactly what you want right now. Because here's the way I see it is people come to you, they're in pain. Like pain is a great motivator.
Yes.
If you're 20 pounds overweight, that's a source of pain and that will get you to move. That will get you to do something.
Right.
But like I said, there's a number of ways to lose 20 pounds. So what happens is if pain is your only motivator, as soon as you lose that 20 pounds, your motivation goes away. Now your behavior returns to baseline. And then and now you regain the 20 pounds. And that's why most people get stuck in yo-yoing because they're only ever motivated by pain.
Yes.
So if we can if we can capitalize on that motivation you have right now to get out of pain and to take action, let's do that. But before that runs out, let's get you into a positive motivation, which is having a vision that pulls you towards it. So now as you get out of pain because you lose the weight or as the motivation just runs out from that,
yes,
you don't need motivation anymore because you've painted a really clear picture of where you're going. And you're just now you're just like excited. You're part of the process. Like you're making the identity shifts, like the whole deal. Right.
That's huge. I think, what came to my mind is Dr. Lisa Lewis's work with Psych Skills for Fit Pros. When she did a podcast with me where she used the term leveraging motivation.
Yes.
Where it's like,
I love that.
I love that too. I was like, that
dope.
is, so as you said there, like pain is an incredible motivator. Like you said, like when you were getting started, you were insecure. That's a pain. Not thinking about the pleasure. That's it. And it can get you off your ass and get moving. But in the middle of that, shift that gear, go into the positive side, look at the vision of it. This is always this battle I've had with, is goal setting good or bad? Like it's always like, right. It's like some people are like, oh, I don't like goal setting. It's like, it's not good. I just work it day by day. And I was like, okay, I can understand that. Like I used to be like, oh no, you need to have a goal. You need to have a vision. But I can understand that person of like, like they're just doing what they think they can do for the day because they just want to get out of pain for that day. But as you just mentioned there, I think that's so good is like in the middle of leveraging that pain. It sounds kind of weird saying that, but I think it's a good way to use it. Yeah. Bring in the positive, bring in the vision in there. Yeah, I think that's a good solution.
It's funny you say that, man, because about the goal setting, because we literally just had one of our coaches in our program asked us because, Angie's got a voice and I have a voice. Generally speaking, I tend to be a little bit more visionary and big picture and possibly flaky on details. Okay. Angie tends to be really, really good with logistics.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so our coach asked us like, hey, could you just give us some clarity about goals? Because Paul, you kind of talk about detaching from timelines, detaching from goals. Angie's very much like in it. Right. And I'm like, that's a great point because you want to be careful about the language you use. So we did a call for our coaches. So a staff call, clarifying it, forced me to organize my thoughts, right? And communicate them to our staff, which was great. And then it ended up being such a good call. They're like, our clients need to hear this. So then that was our client call that week, basically the same thing. Right. But anyway, it's what we essentially came up with, where we landed is that goals will inform your strategy and goals will inform your direction. You know what I mean? So it's like, I want to be jacked. Awesome. Like, this is what you got to do to be jacked, or I want to be strong, or I want to be whatever. Like, okay, this is what you got to do. And a time frame can kind of inform the strategy too. Because if I want a business that does $1 million, well, I mean, I could do $100,000 a year for 10 years. That's $1 million. Right. But there's a different strategy if you do $1 million in 1 year. Right.
Yes.
So that's a timeline difference. And so that being said, having a timeline will having a goal the goal will inform the direction. The timeline will inform the strategy or like the aggressiveness of the action. But then once you have that, you really have to detach and just execute and be open to the fact that things are not perfect, that we don't live in a vacuum,
Right.
And Trevor Kashey put it so beautifully. And, he essentially points out there's dogmatic thinking and there's scientific thinking. And in dogmatic thinking, there's only one acceptable outcome. And really how you get there doesn't matter. In scientific thinking, there's many acceptable, all outcomes are acceptable, really. And all's in the process is where we have to be rigid. Because if we're rigid on the process and then we can learn from the outcome, then we can change the process because we were so concise with it. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'm glad because I've worked with Dr. Kashey's program personally before.
Yeah, he will make you a better person by being around him. He's an amazing person.
He's so smart in regards to the nutrition side of stuff. But exactly what you said there, it's like if you get the right data and you track that properly, then you can figure out where you need to make adjustments because everybody's different. And that's always something we all say, we're all snowflakes. We're all different. It's like everybody's path is going to be different. But it doesn't mean that you don't need to track accurately and follow the plan accordingly. So you can know exactly where that's at.
You have no context for behavior change if you're not rigid in your process. And when I say rigid but if you're not diligent with your process is what I mean. So it's like when we have people weigh themselves every single day, at first they're like, oh my gosh, like I'm up a pound, I'm down a pound, like, this is too much. But after a while, it's just like checking the weather. It just doesn't even matter. Like, this is what I weigh today. What I weigh today literally has no different. That doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Because I'm going to look at the bigger scheme of things.
Right.
And then over time, if I'm not trending the way I want to go, the outcome, one of many acceptable outcomes, since I was so diligent with how I executed my process, I can now change a variable in my process to try and change the outcome. But if I was like, oh my gosh, the only acceptable outcome is that I lose 20 pounds in 12 weeks. Okay. So if you lose 19, you suck. Or if you lose 25 pounds by starving yourself, what I mean? Is that still a win, even though you didn't learn anything from it? You're probably going to bounce back or it's not repeatable because you didn't really pay much attention to what food you were eating. And this is dogmatic versus scientific, but it's genius.
Yes.
To me, the way he described it. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite talks about clarity because it's like really we say that it's like, get clear on it, but it's like, no, now we're actually getting some rigidity to it. I know that word does have like some barnacles on it in there. Right.
It's a good way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah. But it's very important. And it's interesting because the scale is always a funny one, right? It's like, because a lot of people, there can be an emotional attachment to that, but what I found from experience of if that's all you're tracking, if all you're doing is that, then that number is going to it's going to be out in like these big bold letters. But if you're tracking the other process of it and you understand why things are happening, then it's like, okay, now that's just part of the tracking process. You're also tracking all this other stuff right here. Yes. So it makes it so different. And it's interesting. I haven't even really thought of it that much about like, actually we're tracking our workouts. We're tracking our macronutrients. We're tracking our journalism, everything along with this. Okay. Now, these are the great things here. This is what we want to work on a little bit more. It makes it a lot less like bright lighty in there.
Yeah, totally. It's just a piece. It's just a piece of it, man. And if you triangulate it with pictures and measurements, you're all good, right? Like it was funny. I know Angie's got a client right now who she just dropped a ridiculous transformation, I guess, or progress photo or whatever you want to call it. But she's like, I don't know, like in my cut, I'm 3 pounds heavier than I was in my cut. Yeah. And Angie's like, okay, picture today. You know what I mean? Let's look at the full picture, right? And her abs are more defined than she was 3 pounds ago. But also she's eating like 500 calories more than she was. So she's at 19, she's eating more calories, which by the way, makes it easier to sustain, which is healthier overall for hormonal health, which is just more freaking enjoyable. Let's call it that. So she's eating more food. Yeah. The scale says a higher number, but also her pictures show that she's significantly leaner. Like, dude, who cares about those 3 pounds? Right. And it took like when you get the picture, she was like, "Oh my gosh! Like I'm glad I took this picture." you know,
that's such an interesting thing because we see it as an example here of like body composition or strength.
Yeah.
But I've seen that so much in life too, like with business. It's like, we just did this example, like you just mentioned, like, oh, I want $1 million. And it's like, okay, if you actually get clear on that, like
what that looks like.
Well, and it like, okay, what is the day that, like, okay, let's say you hit all your goals. What does your day look like actually? Right. I just did this experience at a retreat with some good people in this group. And when you actually broke down the day that you want to create by achieving your goals, it's like, well, you know what? You don't actually need $1 million to do what you want to do right now. You might need like 100K.
Right. Right. Well, and that's the beauty of clarity. Cause it's like, do you want money or do you want freedom?
Yes.
Most people want freedom.
That's where that came from. Cause I was like, it's like, I've made a lot. I've done the $1 million business of, building a crew. I made a lot of money. I had the home, I had all this stuff for a bit. And there was a time when I was miserable where I'm actually right now, like on paper, making less money than I have in the past before. But like happiness wise and joy is like night and day riches. Yeah. So it's like, it's crazy when you actually take that time to get that clarity. But like you said, sometimes it comes from pain that will get you going. Right. But then moving that over into the positive, like this girl who's like, oh my gosh, I'm 3 pounds heavier. But actually in the reality, it's like, holy shit, you're eating more food. You're probably enjoying your life more. You got more energy. Like, where are we focusing here?
Dude, it's so funny. Cause like from a business perspective, so I had I'm kind of on the opposite of experience of you right now in terms of when we first got into online training. I mean, our profit margins were extremely high. It was Angie, myself, we had a VA, and then one coach for a little bit. And so smaller revenue, higher profit margin, way higher profit margin. Mm-hmm. Right. But then we looked at, well, what's really important to us? What do we want our day to look like? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And then we're like, okay, well, now that we know what we want our day to look like, here's how we can spend that profit. And it was hiring people. And literally we hired, we went from a team, there was myself and Angie plus 3 in January. In March, I think we brought in 8 more. So how massive expansion of the team. Yeah. Let me tell you what happened to the profit margins. They went way the fuck down. Right. You know what I mean? But guess what? My life got way better. I got to do the work I want to do. I got to focus on the podcast and the this and the that and the creative stuff I wanted to do. Right. And also then the business started, and then we created more revenue. Obviously, you don't want to stay stagnant in revenue, but the point is the clarity. Yeah. Right. The point is the clarity, whether that means you want a bigger business to buy back your freedom or a smaller business to have higher margins. It doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong. Yeah. Same with working out. There's no right or wrong. Like you can do whatever you want, dude. If you love spin class, go do spin class. If you're doing it because you think it's going to help you lose fat, well, you're misguided. But if you know that you love it because you love the energy and you love the community and you love the music, who am I to tell you not to do it? Right. You know what I mean?
Why do you think that is such a challenge for so many people to go through this process? I mean, just in your opinion, it's like, I know we put a lot of blame on social media and like too much exposure to that stuff. Like, like you see the guy in the Lamborghini and stuff like that. Like that's what we want for business, or the Jack dude. And it's like, that's what we want. And not actually, is it just because this takes more time, or it's more of a painful process to go through? Like you really need to be more self-aware to do this?
Yeah. I think being honest with yourself is a little bit painful. Yeah. I think being honest with yourself, if it goes against social conditioning, is really painful. Like you're supposed to want this and you're supposed to want that. Right. You're supposed to feel this way. And then, if you don't really stop to examine that, it's easier to go with what you should be doing. And it's almost like a surrendering of your agency. You know what I mean? Right. It's the age old battle of freedom versus security. So it's like you surrender a little bit of freedom because you can be secure in terms of, if I just do what I'm supposed to do, I don't have to look dumb. I don't have to look wrong. I don't have to look crazy. I don't have to risk failing. And even if I do fail doing all the quote unquote right things, at least then everybody could say, oh, poor Paul, he did all the right things, but he failed.
Right.
Whereas if I go and I live this wild, crazy life that's just, way outside the matrix, and, I fail, then people go, well, he's an idiot. He wanted too much. Mm-hmm. Right. He was too selfish. He was too whatever. And so that's actually terrifying to think, to feel like, man, I could potentially fail by taking my own path. And then when I do fail, nobody's going to give a fuck because I was too crazy. Right. I was too selfish. I was Icarus flying too close to the sun. Right.
Right.
That's, yeah, man, I think that's a big part of it, dude, because we're all scared to fail, but more than that, we're scared to look dumb.
Yeah. And we're scared to look content. It's almost like, sure. That's a bad word for a lot of people when it's like, if you're actually really happy with what you're doing, like, I mean, in reality, I know it sounds a little wiggy, but who the fuck cares then what else you're doing? If you're really happy and fulfilled and you can actually say that, I mean, there's always things to work on. I mean, this is an interesting thing I found with more being like, a solopreneur is there's always something to do throughout the day.
Right. Yeah.
There's always something you can do. So I could work 24 hours a day and never be bored of putting more stuff out and putting more content, but actually enjoying what you're doing, where it's like, going back to, maybe you don't need to be 5% body fat, maybe putting the effort into maybe trying to get there. Maybe you're going to learn something from it, but like to live like that, like in a lifestyle, that might be the worst thing in the world for you. You might hate it,
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, dude, exactly right. Man, so many things to touch on with, you just said a lot of good stuff, but, people are scared to change their mind because being labeled a quitter is a bad thing in our world.
Yeah.
So if I'm like, hey, I want to get to 5% body fat, and then I get to 10%, and either A, I'm content, I'm like, I love the way I look, or I'm just like, I don't want to keep going on this cut. Like, well, you quit.
Yeah.
Like, who cares if you quit? Got what you wanted. You changed your mind. That's smart. Changing your mind is smart. Changing your mind in light of new information is actually extremely intelligent.
Yeah.
Staying a course you don't want to be on and ignoring new information is pretty dumb, right? Let's not be dumb. Let's be smart. Let's absorb the new information. We've changed. Our environment's changed. Yeah. Let's let our mind change. It's okay.
Yeah, that is. It's an interesting topic of like growth. Just for growth's sake is not a good thing. It's like just always progressing and moving forward isn't always the answer. Do it. Sometimes actually stepping back and seeing exactly what you want, and then going through that process of getting that clarity. I mean, this kind of really goes into one of the topics I love talking about, which we've been going into, is really the mindset side of health and fitness, with it, because if you don't have that, then everything else is just sets and reps. And if you don't really get into this work, then everything's fleeting and you always feel like you're chasing some part of identity. But with you, I mean, I know you built a brick and mortar for a long time when you were in Illinois, and then made the transition over. I'm assuming that was not an easy transition, but in programming wise, was this piece, like the mindset piece that you have, was this part of what you've always done, or was this something that you've adapted more recently into the program that you do now?
No, I mean, it was where I was going, I would say, having been around people like Dr. Kashi, who made me realize there's more to life than sets and reps. But what had happened was I had spent a decade getting extremely proficient in exercise science and understanding the biomechanics and the FMS, and which is where I met you. And, so corrective exercise, exercise technique, the program design, the optimal program design to make somebody peak and be very strong on a given date, and like all that stuff. Right. And so that's where I thought my value was. Right. So that now this is my identity. Now this is what I believe my value to be to the world, to my clients. And so I train them that way, because you train people how to treat you. And all of a sudden I'm seeing a gym full of people who are, I didn't realize it at the time, but super dogmatic about their training. I missed a workout. What now? I didn't hit the prescribed reps or the prescribed weight. What now? Like just like short circuit, you know what I mean? Or like, hey, was that like, I joke about like this one client, you know, it was a semi-private atmosphere. This person wouldn't do a rep without me watching them. Right. I'm like, you've been training with me for 5 years. Like you can do a squat without me, but they wouldn't. They'd wait for me to like circle a whole room, like grab my attention, be like, hey, can you come over? Like do a squat. Like, was that good? And at first, and this is one of the things that caused me to reflect. I'm like, why? But then I'm like, oh, I put that in their head. I put that in their head with my coaching, right? Because I only felt valuable if I was giving feedback. So I gave feedback on every single rep because I felt like I wasn't valuable if I didn't. And now they can't do a rep without my feedback. So I created this terrible like codependency.
Wow.
Right? And same with the program design. What happens if I don't do it exactly like, oh shoot, like I had to pee in the middle of it and it said rest 30 seconds and I ended up resting for 90 seconds because I had to go take a pee and like, and I'm like, how did everybody get so neurotic? And then I'm like, oh shit, it was me. Like,
oh my God.
One day I was like, oh, it was me. Yeah, I did this.
Yeah. Wow.
Know?
Yeah. That's a tough realization, I'm sure, when you turn it back on yourself.
Yeah. Well, and now I'm like, okay, so what value do I provide for people? And here's the thing, man. I think you really got to be okay with the fact that you're a valuable addition to somebody's life, regardless of what you do. And you just happen to be meeting their life in the training context, right? So if you can be a valuable addition to their life, you happen to be a trainer, and then just help them get the most out of their training, whatever that means to them, wherever they're at lifestyle wise. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so from a training perspective, what that means is throwing out a lot of the stuff that I had learned, because most people just need a very basic program and they can progress on it for years. You know, as far as even the FMS, right? It's like we spent 4 days learning all that stuff. I'm glad I did, because having the base level of knowledge was good. But at the end of the day, I was like, well, I really just need to see your straight leg raise and your shoulder mobility.
Yeah.
And I'm going to prescribe the same 2 exercises to fix them if they're deficient. And you know what
exactly.
I mean? Like,
yeah. Then move on.
And so I learned all these things about peaking and set and rep schemes and periodization. And like at the end of the day, you kind of just got to get stronger in basic movements over the course of years. And that's really all you need. Like you actually don't need that special of a program, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, it's interesting, right? Do you think that you went so deep down that route because that was like your comfort zone? Like you felt comfortable, like, oh, I just want to learn more about this. And this.
Yeah, it was curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's just where I was passionate. So I don't regret it I don't regret it necessarily. I was passionate about it. That's what I wanted to do. I just, like I said, as new information came to light, I'm like, oh, this actually isn't adding to people's lives as much as I thought it would. Right. And I was curious about it because I was seeking answers for myself. I wanted to know everything because I thought once I know everything about this thing, like it's like there's an itch in my brain.
Yeah.
Like, and I had to scratch that itch. Right. And then I got to a certain point and I'm like, well, I'm never going to know everything and I'm never going to scratch this itch completely. But now there's other things I'm curious about. Now I'm curious about this whole psychology component to get somebody to actually stick to the program, or this concept of influencing someone positively, and just all this stuff. Right. And so then I just went on to the next thing. So I don't regret it by any stretch of the imagination, but it's where I was. And all I'm doing is looking back and saying like, this is where I was in the journey at the time,
100%. That's so interesting. You said that we show people how to be treated in there. Yeah. It's like, I wrote that down. You train people how to treat you. I was like, that is such a perfect statement right there of it. And then you get to that point, right, of psychology. I was on a call earlier today with a group, and the term they used was sometimes you need to devolve yourself.
Yeah. Yes. Down. Yes. That's so brilliant.
Yeah. Yes. It's like, it's not just adding more stuff. Sometimes you just need to strip away like all the extra stuff. And it's true. It's like, sometimes you need to just sit back and not say anything, let them figure it out for themselves. Let them kind of struggle with it, make them part of the process. Yes. That on the psychological side, you're actually giving them more by not giving them any more.
Yeah. Yes. Dude. Oh my God. It's so good. Yes. So I think your original question was about the mindset piece before we got in this rabbit hole. But the point is now I teach largely in concepts.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was I saw a problem with what I had built to that point. And now we're not going to, like, it was a perfect opportunity because I can't be there for every rep of every person. And it's like this thing that I built in my mind that was so important, which is exercise programming, is now tertiary in our program. Like really the mindset is first and really the nutrition is second. And workouts are just kind of, I mean, they're better than what people are. If somebody's doing nothing, it's better than that. It's better than, it's more effective maybe than like a home video or something like that. But it's like, am I in there managing it like I did before? No, not at all. I mean, I give guidance and I give guidance and then feedback as opposed to a dictation of every single set and rep.
Yeah. That's interesting. Some of the most successful people that I've talked about who stayed in the coaching world have said exactly what you just said and this is going to sound wrong, but not taking the physical workout piece as important as they used to. And I don't mean that in any sense of saying it's not important, because it is. I absolutely love the system of training and total body work and FMS and, strong first, all that good stuff. But if people just move enough, but they get deep into the mindset side, they get their nutrition down point, they're going to live a lot happier. It's like, and sometimes we think like we need to micromanage this piece so much for people. And I saw that so much, from COVID as well. Like we had a great studio that I was a part of. We had 150 members and like everybody was doing well for the first month or two. Like we did live classes and stuff. People were still engaged. And then all of a sudden people started to drift off. And it was that question I had in my head of like, well, we're still doing the same workouts. We're still doing the same plan. They're still seeing us as we're doing it. Why are they not still able to do it? I'm like, oh shit. Like, yeah, when we were in front of them, leading them every step of the way, they were doing fine. But now all of a sudden they're on their own and they need to self-motivate a little bit more. We haven't taught them anything on that front.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that was like a holy shit moment of like, oh crap. Like we didn't teach as well as I thought that we did. It's like, we need to make a little shift going on here.
Well, you learn, right?
Yeah.
And you learn. And I had a similar moment where a client said to me, it's just not the same if I don't know that you're there waiting for me. And it's like, if you take that, and they did not mean it maliciously, but if you take that for what it actually means, is my value was that I was a warm body in a room, right? I was there waiting for him. That's what got him to work out. I didn't teach him anything else. And it's like, man, that's painful. But the point is you learn something from it. And I learned something from it. And I hate, and this is not meant to throw shade, but I watched a lot of people in our industry shake their fists at the sky or shake the fists at the government or start calling their people lazy for getting a Peloton or for not wanting to come back to the gym, or like really just casting blame everywhere of like the fitness industry being ruined, rather than being like, who cares if the fitness industry is ruined? Like, people still exist. So figure out a way to serve people. You know what I mean? Like it's just not going to look the same as it did before.
Yeah. Well, you got to adapt, right? I mean, I'm sure the people that you work with now, it's probably a little different mindset working with an online community versus a brick and mortar. And that was probably an adjustment in some way.
It is 100%, man. There's a lot of anxiety on my part, I'd say at first, because I'm like, communication is different. I mean, when you spend 3 hours with someone a week, there's no amount. I mean, that's more time than I spend with my friends and my extended family. That's, which is what you'd spend with somebody at a studio. There's no amount of online communication that can create that same dynamic. However, when you are so aligned on values, which you can be in an online community because you're not geographically restricted. So it's like only the people who really vibe with what we're saying are going to come into our community, right? You don't need as much communication. You don't need as much micromanagement. You can communicate, you can get your message across with much less. You know what I mean? And so it's pretty cool. I think I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I will say it can't be purely online. Like our next step is to start creating more frequent in-person events for everybody. Yeah. Not just for us to hang out with clients, but for clients to hang out with each other.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that the big picture for our business will be an online community with frequent, couple time a year, meetup type situations.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is. That's, I've seen that recently too. It's like, you need that in person, that warm body connection is something that I can't take for granted. Yeah. Certainly you can do the online, and it is. And I think it is the message that you put out before of like, there's still people in the world. Yeah. Maybe they're not going to the gyms as much, but they still have the same desires. They still want to be healthy. It's like, there's a way to reach these people and to connect with these people. It might be different. And that's probably people who are very comfortable in their own zone of trying to just force their comfort zone just to stay in there and not looking at these other opportunities. But it's like, it's still new people. But I agree. Like, I think the hybrid based model of training in business, I think that seems like it's the future of what's going to be most of this world that we're working in right now.
I would assume so. Because it's an extremely effective way to do things.
Yeah.
You can nurture a relationship really well online. And then once you meet in person, or if you just meet up a couple times, it can be a very, very strong friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you and Angie always worked together in this?
Man, it's been a while that we have. Yes. I think I always knew this, what I wanted. Yeah. I always wanted a wife who was sort of a ride or die business partner. Maybe before she even knew she wanted that, but back in the day, she was a teacher. She went to grad school right about the time I was getting all my personal training certs to be a teacher. Then she was a teacher. And even when she was a teacher, I was like, hey, why don't you just go do this HKC class, which is a kettlebell certification, but it's less intensive. It's one day, just in case I'm ever sick, or like if you just want to pick up 1 or 2 classes or whatever. So she did that. She got a taste of it. Then she did the RKC. And then about 2000, maybe 14, I had been running. So I'd been running a studio by myself, 1,700 square feet, just this little garage. It was great, man. It was a little 300 square foot office, then like a 1,400 square foot warehouse, big bay door, just a very gritty, but like, it was my vibe, man,
That's the spot. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But I ran that all by myself. And at a certain point it was doing awesome, but I was like, look, I need somebody else. A, there's nobody else I trust more than you. And B, like, we may as well keep this money in our family as opposed to paying out another salary, or, pay you that salary. And, I strongly believe with our dynamic together that we will replace your teacher salary very, very quickly, And so it's been since about 2014.
Wow.
And, yeah, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So then
I was 13.
Yeah.
13,
so then
14.
you guys, so what made the decision to move down to Texas? I know you were in, Illinois, and I know you said like, all right, that business wasn't working anymore. You wanted to make the change. What was it that brought you down to Texas?
It was people, basically. We had been coming down here for some masterminds and stuff. And, we like the vibe, we like the weather. It just feels like the boom town down here. Like, nobody's from here.
Yeah. That's
people are just coming to this place.
Just coming in.
These like-minded people are coming to this place. And so it's like, I saw the people who were moving here and who lived here. It's like, I didn't move here to come be friends with them, but I'm like, if that's the type of person who is in that area, that's where I want to be.
Gotcha.
I mean, and that was kind of it, dude. We were, you know, we just made our mind up one afternoon when the kids were napping, we were hanging out, talking like, and then it was like, what about Colorado? What about Arizona? What about this and that? And like, we'll just do the Austin thing. Like contacted a real estate agent. That was August. By November, we had money down on a house. Then we moved in March.
That's great. Oh my gosh. I think
it was almost like too fast to really think about. Like, we're just going.
No, it was, I think like 50% like of people moved down to Austin over the last like year and a half, you know, down here from the country.
Dude, it was so crazy getting a house here. It was, that's a whole other story, but like we lucked out and we got a house and it you know, it all worked out, man.
It's such a health and fitness based mindset down in there of a lot of people. I know, I mean, I've just followed a lot of people who have gone down in that world, you know, so it's just a very health conscious based world, even though it's online. I'm sure doing the hybrid model, that's like the perfect space to really build this up. We definitely meet people in person all the time who either are in the industry or are looking for something like what we do. You know what I mean? Like people are open to it. Like in Chicago, we never met somebody in person who they're like, well, what do you do? This is what we do. They'd be like, oh, cool. Okay. Conversation's over. Right. Whereas like down here, we'll meet people in person and oftentimes they'll like end up being our clients. So even though it's a online business, in person networking, if you will, like sometimes brings people in because people in this area think that way and value those things. Yeah. Oh, that's so dope, man. So, dude, I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been absolutely awesome. Just, you know, connecting with you. Like I said, I've followed you and Angie and the work that you guys are doing for a while. And I think you guys are right on the money with what people need. And especially this world of not just physical health and fitness, but really the mental side, the nutrition side, everything. So keep doing you, man.
I appreciate it, dude. I appreciate you sharing your platform with me, and man, it's a great conversation.
No doubt, man. If people want to find you, check out more of the content that you're putting out, what's the best place that they can go to?
Man, if you go to missingpiecePodcast.com, that's probably the best place. My podcast is linked up right there. My social media is linked up right there. And then also what I've just recently started building is a Discord channel. And I'm pretty stoked on that. So Discord is just like another app, but it's a place to build community. So it's like it's a place to sort of triangulate all my content.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And hey, new podcast is out, new video training is out. I do a lot of like live streams on Vimeo. So there's a place to triangulate all that, but then also interact. So then people ask questions about, you know, the training, or they give feedback. And it's like, it's building another little subset to the online community. So I'm pretty stoked on that. That's linked up on missingpiecePodcast.com too.
Oh, perfect. Oh, we'll put it right in the show notes. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So
cool, man.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much. Listeners, if you want to follow Paul, you know where to do so. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.